It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'm your host this morning. Going to hit on a number of topics that are prevalent in today's news, and we're going to explore in depth a couple of other areas which I think are important in our awakening and knowledge about where things are headed in our republic, or the lack thereof. Our first segment this morning is going to talk about an update on Syria and the potential conflict over there related to the recent allegations of a nerve gas bombing. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that and understand where we're headed on that. The news out this morning is that both Britain and France are backing off from their fight on this issue, and they're talking about a diplomatic solution at this point. Of course, that doesn't stop the Obama administration from wanting to go in there and start dropping bombs. So this is from the man who won the Nobel Peace Prize, as I recall. Anyway, our second segment is going to talk about immigration and the issues surrounding the goal of the immigration folks who are looking for essentially the opportunity to expand that with illegal immigration because they anticipate that that's going to assist them in obtaining their end goal here of essentially having someone to pay for this disaster. I also want to talk about Guterres. He's a representative out of Illinois. And, you know, he's talking now about how amnesty will prevent. I mean, this is the kind of diatribe we're getting, folks. Guterres is sitting here saying amnesty will prevent rape, death, and children's tears. I mean, you want to talk about pulling on the emotional heartstrings because these people don't have a legitimate logical argument for their positions. And this is the example. Our third segment is going to deal with the Federal Reserve meeting in Jackson Hole, which was completely ignored by the entire media establishment and the dangers associated with that. It's also going to talk about the fact that there was an interesting guest there, one John Boehner, Speaker of the House, and how the central bankers are meeting in Jackson, or have been meeting in Jackson Hole for their annual meeting, where they are planning on their massive push for continued global theft and pain throughout the entire globe as they continue to seize control of all banking, whether it's central banking, whether it's national banking, whether it's international banking. These folks are the Hell's Angels, if you will, and I don't mean that against the bikers. I mean they are angels of hell, literally. Our fourth and final segment is going to talk about the Martin Luther King Memorial and how it turned into such a diatribe of racial divide. You know, the goal of Martin Luther King was not division. The goal was a level of integration that the United States had not seen before. Unfortunately, what we've got here in this particular group, in fact, one of the things that bothers me most about this is that there is one senator in the United States of America who happens to be black, and he was not invited. Really? You mean to tell me that there's a senator in the United States of America who's black, the only senator in the United States of America who's black, and he wasn't invited? Oh, that's right, he's a Republican. Golly gee, I had completely forgotten about that small iota of fact. So we're going to get into those things, and we're going to talk more about them. But first, we're going to touch on the Syrian conflict and the issues surrounding it. You know, we're now facing a lot of pushback globally from virtually everyone on the Syria debacle. And the reason why we are is because the evidence of this massacre and the fact that it occurred is undeniable. The real question in here is who's actually responsible for it? And the answer to that is anything but clear, anything but undeniable. The White House is claiming that they intercepted these phone calls that show undeniable proof that this was on the part of the Assad regime. The problem with that is that they don't have any specific intelligence that anyone above these low-level operatives who were talking about it and in a communication back and forth that they intercepted through their nefarious NSA-type operation. So what they have is two people talking, but both of them are relatively, that's like sitting there and trying to say that a lieutenant who commits an act of crime against humanity in the field is that's reason to go bomb the White House. I hardly think that anyone would give that any credible or credence. And so the White House is facing these steep hurdles as they're going out there and pitching this thing so hard. And, of course, the hypocrisy to this is absurd. Biden, who's going out there trumpeting how this is a crime against humanity and we've got to take action and the only thing that we can do is go in there and blow this terrible, meanie Assad out of the water. This is the same guy who pitched very, very hard for the removal and impeachment of George Bush under the weapons of mass destruction claims that he made before they went into Iraq and ousted Saddam Hussein. And he made no bones about it, folks. He was abundantly clear that any action by a president without congressional approval was an impeachable offense. And so what we now have is this administration, who is now in power, decrying and defying their own screaming Mimi nonsense back, 8, 10, 12 years ago. So, here's the problem. We recognize that there was a massacre. The question is who was responsible for it. We don't really know. We do know that it happened, but we don't know whether it was the Assad regime, and we don't know whether it was the al-Qaeda Syrian forces, rebels, who were trying to bolster their case for a retaliatory military strike by the U.S. and other foreign governments in an attempt to drag us into the conflict. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the danger. And if you think for a moment that they are beyond that, or that's beyond their skill set, or beyond their thinking, or beyond their capacity, you're operating in naivete land, because we do know that they would love nothing more than to pull another Egyptian coup like they did back a year ago when Morsi took over. We do know that al-Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood are very well tied together. And we do know that they have a confidence level that this president would back their play if only they can give him plausible deniability. And how else would you give him plausible deniability than a chemical weapons attack, which he clearly stated if they used, it would cross a red line. So their first goal is, okay, we've taken over all this territory in Syria. Now, I'm hypothecating here, so I'm not suggesting that this is the answer. But it's a plausible explanation for what's occurred. And in the face of the strident responses from the Assad administration or regime that they did not have anything to do with this, one has to at least intellectually consider the option that out of the 8 factions that are warring there, 6 of them are al-Qaeda or Muslim Brotherhood tied, that these guys might actually have the chutzpah to try to pull this off. And since they have taken over very significant portions of Syria, and nobody has any idea where these chemical weapons were hidden, we all know that Syria has them. And, you notice that the administration keeps drumming in the issue that these are crimes against humanity, or they are monumental sins and things like that. Well, guess what? The reason they keep using that kind of language is because it's not illegal. How can I dare say such a thing? Well, I'm going to tell you how. Syria is not a signatory to the chemical weapons bans. And so if they haven't signed on the treaty, now I'm not suggesting that there's not moral implication here if they are responsible. What I am saying is that this administration doesn't have the ability to point to an actual illegality of international law. So that means that it's all based on emotional, push, if you will, right? And so that's the reason they're using this language that is inflaming and is, damning of the Assad regime, because the truth is they don't have a legal leg to stand on. Now, they may have a moral leg, but that's a whole different story. And a moral leg doesn't mean that you can just jump in there and start doing what you want to do. If they're going to, in fact, use the moral leg, and that's the strength of the pillar of their support, then they have to actually have a little bit more than just Obama's outrage. And in this point, I have to call it faux outrage, because let's not forget that this is the same guy who said it's okay for you to terminate post-birth babies. So, and that's domestically. So does he really care about children in Syria? I highly doubt it. What we do know is this. We've spent, for all we know, trillions. We do know at least $1 trillion. But for all we know, trillions, because there's so many black holes of money that are funneled into these dark operations with the NSA and the spy agencies and the CIA and so forth and so on. We really have no idea what these guys have. We have no idea how much money we've spent on them, because it's all secret, right? Everything is a national security secret. I mean, if you want to know what color underwear the president wears, it's a national secret. I really don't get it. Does he wear stripes on his socks, and are they red or blue? Oh, we can't tell you. It's a national secret. Yeah, it's absurd. But what we do have is a scenario where we know that we've spent at least $1 trillion on this massive surveillance system that is global in its scope, highly focused on the United States, against its own claim for existence. And then to make matters worse, it's useless. And the people behind it are useless. Our human intelligence on the ground is non-existent. Our SIGINT, or signal intelligence, in the air and capturing phone calls and internet communications and all of that, against these people, absolutely useless. For starters, one of the problems is that they have a different command and control system than we have, and they don't use the internet as heavily as we do, and they don't utilize telephone communications. A lot of this is handwritten and passed from operator to operator based upon hand-delivered issues and verbal word-of-mouth orders and that kind of thing. Walkie-talkies and two-way radio that's not intercepted or is encrypted. So all of this infrastructure, this massive infrastructure we've built, turns out you may as well, just have a Radio Shack scanner, because that's about all it's good for. We could have saved ourselves $1 trillion and simply gone to Radio Shack and bought a few scanners and put them in key places around the country, and we'd have just as much intel, maybe more. We've got boots on the ground in Syria through the CIA, the dogs of war, who are out there, operating surreptitiously and sneakily, and, they're skulking around like wolves in the night and all of that nonsense. And guess what? It's all useless. These people are incompetent. They're inept. I don't care. I don't want to hear any excuses. I'm not trying to, throw rocks at our troops and all of that. But I got to tell you, folks, this is the Keystone Cops. This entire operation is run like the Keystone Cops. It's manufactured and prosecuted by Keystone Cops. These are bumbling fools. These guys make Clouseau in the Pink Panther look like a rocket scientist. And, it's shameful, really, because they purport themselves to be such experts, and the only thing they're expert at is lying. And they're not even really good at that, because then the truth comes out, and then they got to backpedal from that lie. And, all of this NSA expose that's been coming out, and they just keep backing up and backing up and backing up and backing up and making more and more excuses for why. Well, we really couldn't tell you the truth that time because, it's all national security and we're doing it for your own good. Just trust us. And, oh, well, I'm sorry. Yeah, we kind of got caught here. Somebody else dropped another bombshell on us, and now we got to explain that. And, well, we were really only lying to you the first 2 times because the truth is that, it's all about national security. We really can't tell you anything. If we tell you, we got to kill you, and ultimately you're just going to have to trust us. Then another bombshell gets dropped. And, well, listen, we lied to you those first 3 times because we were just trying to protect you for your own good. I'm sick of it. I've had enough. I've had enough. The truth of the matter is they are lying, carpetbagging, thieving, conniving scum who are so embroiled in their own skullduggery and their own nefarious actions and agendas. They have no clue what's going on. They don't know how those people think. They don't know how foreign governments want to think. They're so interested in covering their own butt and applying their own agenda. And it's this web we weave, right? How many times did you hear your mom say, never lie, because the web you weave, is so intricate, right? And you can't go back and remember the lies you told. Well, guess what, folks? We got a nation and an entire government full of nothing but web-weaving, lying spiders. That's the simple truth. And it's time America recognized it, acknowledged it, and then demanded that it stop. This is supposed to be a nation that is intent and based upon the principle of doing what is right for America. Being over in Syria has nothing to do with Americans' national security and self-interest. Nothing. With one exception. Oil. How dare I say that dirty word? Well, let me tell you why everybody's now backing off. And this is what the mainstream Ministry of Propaganda won't tell you. The truth is, oil in the last 48 hours has hit a 2-year high. And the real truth is that the Syrian government has the ability to do retaliatory strikes against oil interests in a number of countries, not the least of which is Turkey, and also in Israel itself, of course, which isn't really an oil issue, but that's more of a political issue. But they have the ability to prosecute strikes that would make what Saddam Hussein did by burning down the oil fields maybe look like child's play. And so now that the truth is out and oil is starting to climb and the nation's and the world's oil supplies are endangered, suddenly these tough guys over in England and Cameron and Holland, the prime minister of France, the socialist over there, and Obama, that now they're all getting cold feet. Because what they realize is that this could go the other way. In other words, they could go in there and smack Assad around with a couple of cruise missiles, which would be as ineffectual as trying to beat up a knight in shining armor with a twig. And then Assad could turn around and attack, and he could attack in places that, wouldn't be harming his own people, but as a last death throw, he may apply the scorched earth philosophy that we saw done by Saddam Hussein. And if he does do that, the danger, of course, is that he could engage the entire Middle East in this conflagration war that would make the stuff that Saddam Hussein did look like child's play, a kid's game. Here's the real problem. First of all, the Syrian conflict all of this is about one thing. Oil, or at least that's what's forcing them to back off. But what prompted this is Obama's desire to protect his name and his reputation and save face. And not for nothing, but you know what? I, for one, am not willing to go to war to save face for a tyrant and a traitor. That's the truth. And I'm just going to call it like it is. I'm going to say what nobody else has the chutzpah and the cojones and the brass to say. I'm not going to war for a traitor and a tyrant and a usurper and an illegal alien who's not even qualified to be in the office. Oh, boy, he's just too inflammatory. Guess what? I am sick and tired of your mamby-pamby whining. The truth of the matter is America needs to know what's really happening in this nation. And the mainstream Ministry of Propaganda is keeping you all pacified, like Valium. They're giving you mental Valium. They're keeping you occupied with bread and Cyruses. Yeah, Miley Cyruses. That stupid little whore who was bouncing around on stage as if that was entertainment. Come on, please. You see, and why is that the topic of news on every website, every station, every radio, every television news program? If she wants to treat herself like that in full view of millions of Americans, you know what? That only shows her lack of self-esteem and descent into depravity. That's you know, I mean, that has nothing to do with America as a whole. And this whole idea of the voyeuristic American who wants to sit there and you know, be knocked aghast by it, you know, all that is an attempt to keep you stupid and sleeping. Keep your mind off what's really happening, which is the betrayal and the gutting of America from the inside, the betrayal and gutting of America from the outside, the wholesale slaughter of American economy, industry, manufacturing, jobs, the wholesale theft of our resources and economic resources, our natural resources, and the basically the selling of the United States so that they can drag us down while raising the rest of the third world to some mediocre living condition. That's what this is all about, people. Just look at the bigger picture. Step back for a moment. You know, when I worked in corporate America, we used to have a saying, sometimes you got to get out of the woods and get back to the 50,000-foot level and overview the entire forest. And that's what Americans are failing to do. They don't want to look at this from the whole picture so that they can see it and say, wow, this thing is either bigger or smaller or more or differently shaped than I thought it was. That's where critical thinking skills comes in. That's where a disconnect comes in, where you should be disconnecting yourself from the pipeline of the fire hose of trash and mind control that's being forced upon you. And, you know, you're drinking from a fire hose when you are listening to what the mainstream media is feeding you. And you're listening to a fire hose of mind control. That's all of this nonsense is just hoopla and lies and misinterpretation, misdirection, and you know, shielding of the truth. It's cover up for this traitorous piece of garbage that's in the White House. And I, for one, am not willing to go there and create a war so that this guy can save face. That's the simple truth, people. And he's going to go over there and lob a couple of token cruise missiles in. He's going to smack the hornet's nest and then walk away and leave everybody else on the planet, us included, sitting there holding the bag. And that is a travesty and a tragedy. America, don't let this happen. This president, if he goes in there and he starts acting outside of constitutional authority and prosecuting a war, he needs to be impeached. Furthermore, he needs to not just be impeached, but removed from office. Remember, impeachment can't always remove you. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about immigration, the retardedness of this Guterres out there who's trying to lie to us, the 501c3 wholesale sellout of churches, and the new federal ruling that says a gay sermon is a crime against humanity. Holy smokes. Boy, if you don't recognize where this is going, I don't know what to tell you. We're going to be back in just a moment. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Stick with us through this break. We'll be right back. Hang on.